One of the things that I found in having my own business that I really like and why I want to continue doing it is the freedom that I have. Right now, I'm doing Greek classes in the morning, like 9 hours a week. And I do it in the morning because no one is awake and my time is my own. I don't have to answer to anybody. I can go travel if I want and just work from wherever. And I never have to ask anyone. And while I really liked corporate life, the freedom did not exist. And I had so many emergency calls about things that were not emergencies. So as my business has grown and I have more options, I have made a very conscious decision to not work with anyone who expects that of me. And as you say, like, we're not employees. I'm not your employee. I am my own boss. So anyone who respects that, I find, is very respectful of me generally as a freelancer and a business owner. And we work very well together. And so now I'm fortunate to be in a position where I can just only work with those clients and choose not to work with anyone else who has those expectations that they would have of an employee without paying you and giving you the benefits of being an employee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because sometimes people will look at that professionalism and say, well, I learned to be professional in my corporate job and I have to be professional in my writing business. And then they'll confuse that with, or they'll equate that to being available all the time and doing everything that they want you to do and people pleasing and all that stuff. And it doesn't have to come with it. I think sometimes it's that mentality of shifting from employee to entrepreneur that can take some time, which is another thing that we talk about all the time in our community, because whatever your background is, you're not going to be used to this if you haven't been self-employed before. There'll be certain parts of it that you like, certain parts of it that come more naturally to you, but it's going to be very unfamiliar and strange at first. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I look around and I'm like, no one's telling me off. No one's giving me a slap. I don't usually wake up this early. We only start this at 11 a.m. for me. And I'm like, oh, this is really early for me because I don't normally do meetings in the mornings. Sometimes I'm like, ooh, should I feel bad about that? And then I'm like, no, this is awesome.
Yes. Same, I don't wake up with an alarm most days. I still feel a little bit guilty sometimes. And like you say, that, I call it the hangover from the corporate days. Also, it took me a while to get out of that mindset. I should be up at 8 a.m. every day and working 8 hours a day and being responsive to people immediately. It took me a while, years probably, to get out of that mindset, because it is so different from, freelancing. It's just such a different path. And you're the one who's fully in charge if you're used to working for someone else and taking direction from someone else, and suddenly it's you making all of the decisions. It's a really big mindset shift. I think long term, that does give you a lot of confidence.
It's really empowering. And because I felt the same thing, anytime there was toxicity or just you're butting heads all the time, or there's disrespect, or they're looking down on you, whatever it may be, you don't have to put up with that. There's so many other clients and other people who are really nice, really easy to work with, very respectful, and actually care about you as a person and want you to be happy just as much as they want themselves to be happy. You don't have to settle for that or accept that. Just because you've practiced tolerating that in a previous job doesn't mean that you have to do it now. And again, just having that choice of whether or not you do it is just, some people just feel like they ought to do things and then they suffer and they feel like that's just how it should be. But then if you really push through that and you realize that, no, it's all my choice, it's all up to me. There is no one telling me what is right and what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. It is all coming from me. It's kind of overwhelming. And I know what you mean about how it takes years to recalibrate, because I still sometimes look around thinking, who's telling me what to do? Who's making sure I show up every day? No one. It's just me. And I also wanted to touch on the fact that it's part of it is separating out the fact that time doesn't equal money anymore. And that's such a new concept for most people when they become self-employed. It's not just this hour equals this amount of money for that period of time. That's how we're used to calculating our worth. And it's just not that. You know, like you could be doing all client work and not actually be paid anything because your invoice is not coming in until next month. Or you could be doing all marketing and all prospecting and all networking and also get paid nothing. But then you could get an amazing opportunity that comes from that then pays you like $2,000 in a day because you just, you know, ask for a retainer. It just does not correlate at all anymore. And I think that's why a lot of the emotional roller coasters happen in entrepreneurship, because you're trying to find that like direct correlation and it just isn't there.
Yeah, exactly. And like one thing that I found that is really interesting is also the expectation to work a certain amount of hours per day. Like in corporate life, I worked at least 8 hours per day at my desk, sometimes physically in office, then occasionally remotely because it was also pre-COVID. I had to be there, even if I had finished all of my work, and I am a really fast writer. And so sometimes I would finish my work and just be sitting there and be like, I have to sit here for 5 more hours. I'm waiting for someone else. Like there's literally nothing I can do. I just did my job. I did someone else's job. Now I just have to sit here forever and wait, working for myself. I don't have to do that, but it took a while for me to get, like years probably, for me to get comfortable feeling like, oh, I'm just done. I finished. I sent my invoice, so I will get paid. And now I can just go do whatever I want. But I found that I had like a lot of guilt also for that, because I'm like, you should work 8 hours a day. Like you should work a lot of hours in order to be successful, in order to be professional, in order to be fulfilled. One of the things that I realized that helped me get through it is also that sitting at a desk is not productivity. Like in corporate life, when I was sitting at a desk for 8 hours, I would be in meetings for 2 hours. I would spend an hour gossiping with my colleagues. I would have a half hour for lunch or whatever. So I wasn't writing for 8 hours a day ever. And to expect myself to do that in freelancing is unrealistic. I can't write for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's a really good recipe for burnout. I'm just not very effective when I do that. So figuring out how to become more effective and efficient, and then allowing myself that time and just not force myself into those old working patterns that made sense in corporate life when I had to be available for a lot of stuff, but I don't now. And I find that gives me a lot more energy also for my future work, instead of trying to grind through a lot of stuff. Figuring out what I can handle and write really well is about 4 hours a day. And anything more than that, it's just kind of like a slog. I don't really gain anything in efficiency and productivity, and I just kind of sit at my desk and stare into the screen. And I don't have to sit there because I feel like I should work 8 hours a day.
Yeah, so learning that we get rewarded for being more efficient and more productive in less time, as opposed to just being rewarded for sitting there and being available and looking like you're doing something. It's completely different, because I also find it exhausting if I just have to be somewhere for no reason whatsoever. Like I find it just infuriating and draining. You know, like there's so many situations like that. Like if you're in a waiting area to see a doctor and you're just like indefinitely there, and you're like, well, it's a sunk cost. I've been here for so long now, I may as well stay. But then at what point do I give up and walk away? I don't know, because I have no information. And it just like that lack of autonomy, and just knowing that regardless of what I think, I have to sit here and pretend. It was so infuriating to me. And so now, yeah, you're right. You're kind of learning that your time is your own, every single minute of it. And what feels most productive probably is most productive. There's nothing else to analyze or figure out. It's just like, oh, you know, when I do more than 4 hours of writing, it's not my best work, or I'm not enjoying it, or I'm like really pushing hard. But if I just, you know, take an extended break and come back the next day, like it's super easy. And so we kind of view ourselves more as human beings as opposed to just robots or machines.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we're not machines. We need like free time. I think that also ties into like the digital nomad thing, because this profession gives you so many opportunities to travel. Like last year, now I live permanently here, so I'm not traveling full time, but I still travel a lot. currently, because of my residency permit, can't go anywhere but Greece, which is like a great problem. It's very beautiful. If you have to be stuck somewhere, it's great to be stuck in Greece. I took so many trips within Greece last year because I have realized also that, yeah, I can just take my laptop if I want to go and either take time off work, which I do sometimes, and I try to be good about doing. I took almost all of August off because I'm trying to become Greek, and I was like, this looks really nice. But also just having the freedom to be like, yeah, I am bored of Athens this week. I want to go to like a little island and just bring my laptop. Or sometimes when I was doing more nomading, I could leave the country. I would be like, I think I'm going to go work from Croatia for like 2 weeks. Why not? I have friends in England. We'll go to England for a week, and being able to just pick up and do that without asking anyone, knowing that you can get your work done and you won't be any less productive, and you can still like keep everything going. That kind of freedom is like, it's addictive a little bit. It's so exciting.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like big elaborate trips either, like, which I think again people will kind of get stuck in their head about that. Like, I remember when I was traveling through Greece and Italy and a few other places, like I would just do a couple of hours of work here and there, and then I would just go out for a walk, go for a coffee shop, go have lunch, go take some photos or go look at some, museum or something. And it was just like a few hours here and there, and then I'd be productive whenever I wanted to be. And it just really enhanced my quality of life, just knowing that I could do that at any time and that I wasn't locked into this location or working at this time or that time. And so if you are the kind of person who gets bored easily, or you enjoy exploring and traveling, then you can do it however you want to do it. You can be super busy for 3 or 4 weeks and then take like 2 weeks off, or you can just do like little bits here and there and kind of spread everything and not work with too many people at one time. I generally prefer that, just because I'm not the switch off 100% and enjoy your vacation kind of person. I'm more like, I like to work, but I certainly don't want to be like crazy busy all the time either. And I need those like little things, like weekend trips. It's those kinds of things where your lifestyle is more integrated with your work, that once you start realizing how satisfying that feels, it's very addictive. I think we've sort of touched on a lot of the key elements of like adapting your lifestyle, adapting your mindset, adapting your approach to business, and kind of evolving past those initial stages to make things a bit more stable. It seems like the flexibility has increased as the confidence has increased, as the client base has solidified, which is what you would expect. Is there anything else that you think is really important for people to know if they're considering more of a digital nomad type of lifestyle?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for both freelancing and being a digital nomad is like being really intentional about finding community and people who are doing the same things that you do. It really helps you have that base of, one, people to turn to for advice, because that is important, but also people who just like understand what you're going through. Also, because both feel like being a digital nomad and being a freelancer, you can seem very glamorous from the outside. You know this well. But like, there's difficult parts too. And if you have a community of people who are also digital nomads and have been through the same thing, you have that kind of support in a way that is hard to get from your friends who work in corporate life, even if they're really great. Just people who are going through the same things you are. People who are also freelancers, who are going through, have gone through tough times like you have. Like, really being intentional about finding those people who you resonate with, that will get you through. And there's hard times in any kind of profession. I've been doing a lot more community building in 2024, and that was amazing. Like, it's just, it's so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the community that we have at Prospology is so strong, and it's so amazing to see everyone connecting over common values and interests and aspirations. But even, sometimes we'll look for communities within our profession, but then we forget to look outside of that too. Recently, I was at a networking event with a bunch of entrepreneurs. Someone was talking to me about these digital nomadic communities that they were a part of because they're always traveling, taking their work with them. And I was like, oh, I really resonate with that lifestyle. But it never occurred to me that I could join these kinds of groups because I've only thought about doing it in terms of entrepreneurship or in terms of medical writing. But actually, there are people out there living lives that are very similar to yours or the ones that you want to have. And so if you can open your mind and kind of look outside the box, I think there's so many communities out there.